fall of an empire and rise of a villain. The age of exploration and the decline of thriving Arab and Indian traders began with the siege and fall of Constantinople. The fall of the city in 1453 not only marked the end of the Byzantine Empire, once part of the Roman Empire, but also gave the Ottoman Empire control over the land routes of spice trade to Europe. This blockade disrupted traditional trade networks and forced European nations to seek alternative routes. Spain and Portugal, eager to bypass middlemen like Arab and Venetian traders, sought direct access to the Indian spice trade. As the result, in 1492, Spain funded Christopher Columbus' voyage to find a shortcut to India, just as Europe suffered another Ottoman blockade. Instead, he landed in the Bahamas and wrongly believed he had discovered a trade route to India. Columbus' expedition initiated a competitive response from Portugal. King Muhammad I, who had hostile relations with Spain, funded an expedition to India. The man he selected was Vasco da Gama, a noble-born naval officer and a villain who became infamous for his ruthless methods. In 1497, Vasco da Gama set sail with 4 ships, navigating around the Cape of Good Hope and reaching Calicut in 1498. This voyage, he might not know, but it changed global trade forever. The local ruler, Zamorian, welcomed Vasco da Gama and traded with him despite the objections from Arab and Indian traders. Vasco da Gama arrived in Portugal in 1499 as a hero, his ships overflowing with spices. The profits were so immense that Portugal wasted no time in preparing a second, more ruthless voyage. The second voyage and Portuguese dominance. Unlike the first voyage, the second voyage's purpose was a military campaign. This time Vasco da Gama sailed with 20 warships to establish Portuguese supremacy. The Zamorian, now wary of the Portuguese, denied the entry. Enraged, Vasco da Gama, in retaliation, bombarded Calicut, massacred traders and even burned ship-filled Muslim pilgrims. He forced local rulers to accept Portuguese dominance and set up a trading post in Cochin, exploiting the city's rivalry with Zamorin. In the following years, the Portuguese captured Goa in 1510, Malacca in 1511, and Hormuz in 1515, establishing an oceanic empire to control trade in the Indian Ocean. The Portuguese enforced control to the cartel system, requiring Arab and Indian traders to buy permits for trading and entering the Portuguese-controlled port. They attacked those who refused and looted or destroyed their ships. With control to the choke points of Goa, Malacca, and Hormuz, the Portuguese successfully used a naval blockade to weaken Indian and Arab traders. For the next century, Portugal dominated the Indian Ocean spice trade, restricting commerce with the Ottomans and Arabs. The entry of other European powers. The Portuguese and Spanish monopoly over lucrative trade angered other European nations, fueling a mad rush to participate in the spice trade. The Dutch, English, and French soon entered the competition. In 1602, the Dutch established control over the Spice Islands, the exclusive source of nutmeg, cloves, and make. This Dutch conquest considerably weakened the Portuguese influence in the Indian Ocean. The Dutch conquered Malacca in 1641 and established bases in Sri Lanka, Java, and Cape Town. These conquests wrested the influence and the spice trade routes from the Portuguese. The British arrived later, but they slowly expanded their foothold in India and beat back the Dutch and Portuguese competition. They took Indian trade and established ports in Bombay, Calcutta, and Madras. These port cities, even today, remain key economic hubs of India. This is proof of British colonial success. Meanwhile, in 1565, the fall of the Vinegar Empire to the Deccan Sultanates left South India vulnerable to European encroachment. The rise of Dutch and English in the Indian Ocean in the 16th century further eroded the Portuguese influence. France joined the colonial race in 1664 in the Indian Ocean but found itself at a disadvantage. The Dutch, British, and Portuguese had already established a strong presence in India and the Indian Ocean. Despite this, France had managed to capture Pondicherry, Mahé, Karaikal, Yanam, Chandigarh, and Reunion. However, British successive victories in the Carnatic Wars and the Seven Years' War, 1763, in Europe crushed French ambitions of dominating India, leading to military decline in the region. The pivotal moment for British colonialism came in 1757 when the British won the Battle of Plassey and took control of India's most prosperous province, Bengal. With Bengal's wealth and taxation, the British were capable of consolidating and outpacing their European rivals. By the late 18th century, the British had marginalized the French and Dutch in India, while Portuguese influence had faded. The reason for British colonial success. The Mughal Empire, once a formidable force, overextended itself under Aurangzeb. Continuous wars with the Marathas drained its treasury. Early on, the Mughals were very successful in resisting European powers. Aurangzeb even invaded Bombay and defeated the British. But after his death, the weak successors lost their central control to regional governors, Nawabs. Nawabs in Bengal, Allahabad, and Alwar became semi-autonomous after Aurangzeb's death, neglecting tributes to the Mughal throne. This instability allowed the British to exploit local conflicts using divide-and-rule policies. The British financed money to the Mughal rulers and their adversaries, gradually usurping control over the empire. European naval supremacy and decline of local traders. European naval dominance in the Indian Ocean caused a rapid decline of Arab and Indian traders. European navies targeted Arab and Indian merchant fleets, which were optimized for trade and lacked warships. Although European powers had smaller warships than merchant ships, they loaded them with heavy cannons to maximize firepower. Additionally, they trained their crews in naval warfare, enabling them to board and seize enemy ships. The Portuguese mastered the technology of sailing against the wind, which was beneficial in naval warfare. These ships were capable of chasing, escaping, or maneuvering for advantageous positions against the wind. However, Arab and Indian merchants could not operate their boats against the wind and were sitting ducks during these times. Europe's naval superiorities helped the Portuguese to establish their empire and influence trade in the Indian Ocean. Furthermore, Portuguese and other European powers suppressed Indian local rulers from building the warships. Even though local rulers adapted and put up a fight, they gradually lost ground and compromised with European powers. Also, Europeans had state-sponsored navies. However, Indian and Arab fleets remained under the control of merchants and not backed by powerful states. Major powers like the Mughal Empire, the Marathas, and the Vijayanagra Empire prioritized land armies and agriculture over naval investments. They outsourced maritime defense to merchant guilds. This fragmented approach and lack of naval unity caused them dearly against the well-organized European powers. Though the Mughals and Omani Empire had some success in resisting European powers, they gradually lost, and Europeans became the dominant power in the Indian Ocean because they had better organization, technological superiority, and strategic warfare. By the late 18th century, England became the undisputed hegemon of the Indian Ocean and controlled key trade routes. The impact on Indian Ocean trade. With British supremacy and their direct access to spices, textiles, and luxury goods, European rivals had to contend with the scraps in the Indian Ocean trade. Furthermore, the British systematically dismantled the local merchants' trade network and eliminated their merchant fleets and warships. Europeans reoriented the benefits of the spice trade entirely to Europe, leaving nothing for local traders. Thank you for staying with me until the end. In the next episode of Chronicles of the Indian Ocean, we will explore how the two world wars affected the Indian Ocean. Before you leave, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. I would love to hear your thoughts on the age of exploration in the Indian Ocean, so feel free to drop a comment below. See you in the next one. Bye.